Hello there, and welcome once again to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett, along with Kent Myers. We're here every week, meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. We welcome in an old friend today.
Yeah, today we're really glad to welcome back to the set of The Verdict in just a few minutes in the next segment to Kris Steele, former Speaker of the House of the state of Oklahoma, and now the Executive Director of a team ministry. He's going to talk about the team ministry purposes, missions, projects, what they're doing, and then he's also going to talk to us about an initiative petition that Kris is heading up dealing with criminal justice reform. I think the audience will find it interesting.
Absolutely. Kris Steele, today's guest on The Verdict. We'll be right back.
What I can offer is insight into understanding the Native American art, how these artists are expressing themselves as cultural people. I am Heather Ottone. I'm a Native American researcher and curator, and I am Chickasaw. I can remember in first grade the teacher saying, "Well, you're so lucky you don't look Indian." That was difficult to hear, because it was what I was. It's what I am. I think there's a renaissance going on amongst the tribes. I think the Chickasaws are leading that. We didn't die. We're not gone. So what are we now? And what can we do now to start to form that identity, to survive into another century? And to have the culture guiding us into that future, that would be significant.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
Hello there, and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
As I indicated in the opening segment, our guest today is Kris Steele. Kris is the Executive Director of TEAM. TEAM stands for the Education and Employment Ministry here in Oklahoma City and statewide, and nationally, as a matter of fact. He's the Executive Director here in Oklahoma. He, of course, is a former pastor here in Oklahoma. He's a former public school teacher. And perhaps most notably to most of you, I'm not saying most importantly, but most notably, you may recall him as being Speaker of the Oklahoma House of Representatives for a couple of years until he term limited out of his service in the House. This is his third visit to The Verdict. Welcome back, Kris. Glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm honored to get to be here.
Now, I'm wondering what your take is on the budget issues that the current House and Senate and the governor are going through. Having been in those shoes, you can't be thinking right now, gee, I wish I was there to be in the middle of that.
That's exactly right. I think often about the hard work that my former colleagues are faced with right now. Mm-hmm. The budget issues are very real. This is obviously coming on the heels of a pretty tough budget year last year when we also faced a deficit. And so to come up with the funding mechanisms necessary to protect core services of government in this particular economy is pretty tough.
Kris, is this though an opportunity in the fact that because there's some sort of a crisis, is there an opportunity to try and maybe readjust the revenue streams and try to see how we can reapportion how we fund government and state?
Oh, I think so. I think, oftentimes government at any level tends to be reactive instead of proactive, and we should always and consistently be looking for the best and most appropriate methods to fund state government. And given a situation like we're in today, I think it's necessary that we reevaluate, recalculate, re-examine, and potentially chart a new course for how we fund state government moving forward.
I know almost every year there is criticism of the legislature for not coming up with the budget until the very last part of the session, maybe the last week, last 5 days of the session. And the criticism is, why didn't you do it further or sooner? How come you spent so much time messing around with it and didn't let us look at it till the very end of the session? This year it seems to be a good bit more justified in that the target keeps moving. I mean, it seems like several times during this legislative session, the amount that was going to be needed to fill a budget hole has gotten larger. That's right. And I don't know how you plan for something like that, where there's a continuous moving target.
Sure. The reality is that the budget discussion started long ago, and they primarily take place with the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the President Pro Tem of the Senate, and perhaps their top budget advisors within the body, the Appropriations Chair, and so on and so forth. It would be my expectation that those meetings would take place at least twice a week. But you're right, it's very, very difficult to know exactly what your target is when the projections and the reports continue to come in that it's much less than what you had even anticipated going into the session. But there's no question that the members are dialed in and focused on making sure that they can do the best possibly that they can do given the resources that they have to appropriate.
Well, we appreciate you serving the role as kind of legislative analyst for us, because we still associate you so fondly with that role. But I know you've moved on, and TEAM, T-E-E-M, is something that you're passionate about and fully vested in. Can you kind of explain to the viewers who may not have heard of the organization what it is you're trying to accomplish?
Absolutely. TEAM is a nonprofit organization based here in Oklahoma City that exists to break cycles of incarceration and poverty, primarily through education, job training, character development, and job placement assistance. We work with individuals who are impacted by incarceration, and our service model actually lasts for 18 months. The first 6 to 9 months occur pre-release or before the person is released from incarceration, and then we're able to stay with that individual for 12 months after they transition back into our community. We provide free legal assistance, case management services, mentoring services, job training, and employment assistance to help individuals who are in the process of rebuilding their lives get back on track.
Well, what happens without TEAM? I mean, what was going on before TEAM was created?
Without TEAM, once a person in Oklahoma has paid their debt and served their time, they're in essence given $50 and a one-way bus ticket, a pat on the back, and they're expected to go and do well, be a productive...
And don't come back.
Yeah, be a productive member of society. And the reality is, with a felony conviction, it almost acts as a scarlet letter that excludes individuals from participating or contributing in society in many pro-social ways. So it excludes an individual from employment opportunities, from housing opportunities, from public assistance that may be available or necessary to help that individual kind of get back on their feet. And so I think it's very, very important that we understand what effective programming is necessary to help an individual not reoffend and ultimately help an individual be all that they were created to be.
What do you do with the offender that comes into your program that hasn't completed high school? Do you have any GED type programs for them or anything?
We do. We are a GED testing and training site. So we provide both instruction and test in site. We also have, and that would be the first step obviously, but we also have a relationship with the Department of Career Tech, and we offer some career credentialing that includes culinary arts certification, welding certification, heavy machinery certification, and construction trades. And in addition to that, we're talking to OSU OKC about the possibility of connecting some of our participants with some college courses online through our program as well.
Kris, if a person had a substance abuse problem when they were incarcerated, what is their life like when they re-enter society? Are they likely to re-enter that substance abuse issue, or is there a decent chance that being incarcerated has cleaned up their system and perhaps they have an above average chance of moving forward?
The reality is, if a person battles addiction or mental illness prior to incarceration, they're going to transition back out into our community battling those same sort of issues. The Department of Corrections at this moment in time is at 123% capacity. It's all they can do to simply warehouse individuals that are entrusted to their care. And so effective intervention or appropriate treatment to help a person with those core issues just does not exist. And so if a person battles addiction before they're incarcerated and they don't receive any help to deal with that issue, when they transition out, they're going to continue to battle those same kinds of core issues.
Did I see in the media an action taken by Governor Fallin to perhaps allow folks with felony records to obtain state employment, whereas in the past they could not?
She did. So Governor Fallin, through an executive order, removed the question of, are you a convicted felon, from state job applications. Now, that does not mean that an individual who has a criminal past automatically obtains employment with the state of Oklahoma. But what it does mean is that that individual is not automatically excluded from consideration for employment if he or she is qualified, has the skill set necessary to do the job. He or she would potentially be given an opportunity for an interview and have the chance to explain what the employer may find when the background check is done. But they would also have the opportunity to explain what they've learned from that experience and how perhaps they're a different person today.
How did you get involved with TEAM? I know I read to our viewers your background, and it's quite varied, and you've been outstanding every place you've been. How did you come to be associated with TEAM?
Yes, sir. I became associated with TEAM through my interest in criminal justice policy and criminal justice reform. While serving in the legislature, I began to understand how we are not achieving desired outcomes when it comes to reducing crime and improving public safety. I also realized pretty clearly how our current set of policies and current system actually work to keep a person from reaching their full potential in life once they've paid their debt and served their time. And so I wanted to be a part of an organization that ultimately would allow us to demonstrate the value in connecting the gifts and the talents that exist within individuals who have been justice involved with our greater community and with society as a whole.
We're going to have to jump in and get to a break. We're talking to Kris Steele. We're interested in his work on TEAM, and he also has an initiative petition that he's working on. We'll learn more about that in our next segment of The Verdict.
The integrity of our air, land, and water. The energy to power our lives. They all matter.
That's why many oil and natural gas producers across Oklahoma voluntarily implement green completion methods,
Which can capture more of a well's produced gas and reduce emissions up to 90%. Cleaner air, more energy. They both matter. Learn about other ways Oklahoma producers are protecting the air at oerb.com/bothmatter.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett, Kent Myers, and our guest is Kris Steele, the former Speaker of the House, who's now very involved in TEAM, an organization that tries to help people who have been incarcerated re-enter society. During the break, you and I discussed this scenario that concerns me and appears to be a little bit of a quandary, in that when a person is released, in my mind, they almost need to be around people who care about them. But in many times you'd think, well, that may be the same culture that led to the incarceration to begin with. So what advice do you give to people who are entering that reentry program?
Well, you're exactly right, and oftentimes home environment plays a key role in an individual's journey to incarceration. And so when a person has paid their debt and served their time and is in the process of reentering society, we match them, we connect them with a mentor, a person who acts as a source of encouragement, a source of affirmation, to reinforce pro-social decisions and healthy behaviors. And even the research would indicate that positive, healthy relationships alone reduce recidivism by like 22%. So it's very, very important that a person is surrounded with the right kind of influences to help them stay on the right path in life.
Let's take a little different approach now and talk about a little different topic, and that is the initiative petition that you're involved in. Can you tell our viewers what that is and what's going on?
Absolutely. So I will be as succinct as I can be, but the reality is this: spending for corrections in Oklahoma, more appropriately, spending for incarceration, has increased 172% in the last 2 decades. And it's important to note because the legislature generally makes those appropriations in the name of increasing public safety, reducing crime and increasing public safety. But the reality is our prisons are at 123% capacity and our violent crime rate continues to increase. And so we're not getting the kind of positive return on investment that we would hope for from a policy standpoint. And so what we've done is we've studied the best practices in other states, conservative states, and we are proposing through an initiative petition to reform our sentencing guidelines for nonviolent offenses, low-level offenses, and reclassify simple drug possession and low-level property crimes from felony convictions punishable by misdemeanors to, or punishable by incarceration, to misdemeanors punishable by treatment in the community. And then the second state question ultimately identifies a dedicated source of revenue to fund the treatment and mental health care that's necessary within our communities to make sure that people have access to the help that they need.
So there are actually 2 initiative petitions combined to accomplish the main result.
That's exactly right.
And the main result is?
The main result is reducing our prison population, addressing root causes of criminogenic behavior, helping people who battle addiction or mental illness receive the help that they need to be stable, healthy, contributing members of society, and making better use of our state's resources.
Well, why does an initiative petition have to accomplish this? Why couldn't it be done legislatively or some other way?
In Oklahoma, it's politically advantageous to be perceived as quote-unquote tough on crime. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that we get caught up in the political gridlock that takes place within the state capitol when we start talking about significant corrections reform policies. And so we've done our homework, we've polled the issue, and it's quite clear that the voters are very much in favor of these reforms. And so in order to sort of bypass the political gridlock and give the people of Oklahoma a chance to have their voice heard on this issue, we're going the route of an initiative.
Well, so you perceive there's a disconnect between what people believe and whom they elect to represent them, that the views are different.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think particularly when it comes on matters of criminal justice
Mm-hmm.
policy, there is a disconnect. The reality is we can be just as tough and twice as smart on criminal justice policy if we'll just take time to do our homework, study the policies that have been very effective in other conservative states, and base decisions on facts and the data rather than emotion and fear.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back and say again, the first petition deals with reclassification of offenses and the sentences that can be imposed because of those offenses. And the second petition deals with what?
It deals with the funding. So the first petition, it's State Question 780, seeks to reclassify simple drug possession and low-level property crimes from felonies to misdemeanors, and the consequence would be treatment in the community.
And this is statutory change, not a constitutional change.
That is correct.
Okay,
These are statutory changes.
What's the second petition?
The second petition is State Question 781, and it directs the Office of Management and Enterprise Services, which is the financial agency within state government, to calculate the cost savings from reducing our prison population for these low-level offenses and redirect that funding back to counties to be able to pay for the treatment and the mental health care and the supervision that would be necessary to improve quality of life and increase public safety.
So it's revenue neutral in theory?
Yes. Well, probably, actually, we would be better ahead, or money ahead, if we enacted these policies. The reality is we can continue to pay for $20,000 a year for incarceration, which is a failed outcome from a public safety standpoint, or we can pay $6,000 a year, which is roughly the cost of treatment in the community annually for success. So it's, I think this is a way that we definitely can make better use of limited resources. The statistics support that this is in the best interest of public safety based on what's happened in Texas and Utah and North Carolina and states all over America.
Well, Kris, how much of this is just our inability to deal successfully with mental illness?
I think it's a big part of it. I think it's the reality that we don't have adequate mental health care throughout the state of Oklahoma. We're not treating mental health illness appropriately, and so as a result, we are paying for the consequences. We're paying for the behavior instead of treating the root cause, and I think that's really where we're at on this. This enables individuals who are ill, who are sick, to get the help that they need to be healthy, to be contributing members of our community, and I think in the process we're going to start to destigmatize mental illness and substance abuse addiction throughout our state.
Politically, there's going to be a number of initiative petitions in front of people. How do you communicate to people to vote yes on this one, vote no? What's the campaign plan?
We are in the process of gathering signatures right now to make sure that we can get these 2 state questions on the ballot in November. The next phase, once we complete that task, will be to launch a public awareness campaign across the state of Oklahoma. We will engage in town hall meetings from one end of the state to the other. We'll do some radio and some TV ads, and hopefully we will enter into a discussion, a dialogue with the public on what is the best use of state resources and really what is the value in appropriately treating mental illness and substance abuse addiction as a disease.
Are you identifying any groups or individuals that aren't necessarily in favor of this and dialoguing with them in any way?
We are. So this does represent a paradigm change in the state of Oklahoma, but I want to be clear, we are not seeking to legalize or decriminalize anything. We're seeking to reclassify drug possession and low-level property crimes, and so there would be some within law enforcement.
All nonviolent.
All nonviolent, all low-level offenses. That's exactly right. For the person who truly poses a danger or a threat to public safety, we believe that individual ought to be incapacitated, but we need to make sure incarcerated. Yeah. But we ought to make sure that we have the resources and the space available to incarcerate those folks and not the low-level offenders. And so we're having lots of good discussion around the state of Oklahoma to build support for these reforms.
I'm very familiar with the overcrowding at the Oklahoma County Jail. What about the rest of the counties around the state? Is there overcrowding in the other counties, or is it just as bad?
Yes, sir. And as a matter of fact, Mayor, I feel honored that I get to be with you on the task force that's looking at the overcrowding in the Oklahoma County Jail. And would tell you that Tulsa County has just recently launched a similar committee to look at the overcrowding issues that they're facing, as has Rogers County, the Claremore area. And it's not unique to Oklahoma County. This is an issue that is predominant throughout Oklahoma.
Your ultimate goal in about 30 seconds is to finish your signature drive when and be on the ballot in November?
Yes, sir. We have to collect the appropriate number of signatures by June the 7th. So we're right in the middle of collecting signatures. Hopefully the viewers will see us out and about and be willing to sign the petition to give the people of Oklahoma a chance to have their voices heard on this very important issue.
All right, and if you're interested in volunteering in this effort, they can contact you through TEAM.
They can.
I would assume.
Absolutely.
Kris Steele is our guest today, doing some incredible work as a true public servant, serving in the House of Representatives, serving as Speaker of the House, and now putting his efforts into helping people who have been incarcerated re-enter society in a productive manner. A lot of really good potentially along the way. Kris, thanks for your work on all these subjects.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And Kenton, I'll have a final word when we get back.
There are now 11 million of us who live here and work here. I was 15 when I came here 6 years ago. I raised my family here. I drive my truck to my job every day. The only difference between now and 6 years ago, I do it legally. I wanted to. Because this is my home.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
You have children coming from a different lifestyle, different mindset. You have to open your arms and really do what you have to do to have that child become a part of your family. And if it's more patience, that's what you do. Kids gotta know they can trust you. And that's what we try to do with these kids.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to The Verdict, wrapping up the show with Kris Steele.
Kris has been successful in everything he's attempted. He's going to do a fine job running this initiative petition, and we wish him well in his work with team.
Good combination of the sensitivity to deal with the issue,
yes,
and the confidence and sophistication to realize it's not easy.
Yes.
Yeah, and
He's
we
a
wish Kris
professional,
well.
yeah.
We have some website information for you. You can get more information about Kris and his efforts at okjusticereform.org. And we have a website, theverdict.tv. Tell us about a guest or a show subject you'd like to see. We will see you next week, right here on another episode of The Verdict.